Divine understanding. Where wisdom meets peace. The terrible death of the prophet Isaiah. The terrible death of the prophet Isaiah at the hands of King Manasseh. This is the story of one of the most famous prophets of the Old Testament. The prophet Isaiah, who also predicted the suffering of Jesus Christ and prophecies that were always fulfilled. He fearlessly criticized the decisions of the kings and predicted tragedies for Israel if it continues on its wrong path. There are over 65 references to Isaiah in the New Testament, and Isaiah is mentioned over 20 times. According to the stories of tradition, he met his death in a horrible way, being clenched in half by the king Manasseh. Isaiah, son of Amoz, one of the best-known prophets of the Old Testament, began his prophecy in the days of King Uzziah in 745 BC. He predicted God's judgment on the king and the people through his prophecies. He was a central prophet of the Old Testament, along with prophets such as Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. His ministry unfolded during the turbulent periods of the kingdom of Judah that spread into the kingdom of kings such as Uzziah, Ahaz, Hezekiah, and Manasseh. In his first prophecies in 735 BC, he prophesied to King Uzziah, who saw his death and the death of his wife and to children. Isaiah gladly accepted the prophetic mission because he recognized the moral situation of his people at that time, which led him to want to save his people from the tragedy that was to come. In addition to the social corruption he witnessed, he also saw the debauchery of the rulers, the debauchery of the rich, and the superstitions and idolatry of the entire population. At the same time, he saw the growing strength and approach of the Assyrian conqueror to the land of Israel, and connected the two things by saying that the sins of the people would lead to destruction. Isaiah became involved in the politics of kings. Under his influence, King Hezekiah began his religious reformation to purify idolatry. But on the other hand, Hezekiah did not accept Isaiah's political advice and rebelled against Assyria, for which he paid a high price. King Hezekiah, a descendant of David, received into his hands a sinful and corrupt kingdom during a period of change. The kingdom of Israel then falls into Assyrian hands, which threatens to continue the occupation and destroy their kingdom as well. Hezekiah prepares for a general rebellion for the long siege of Jerusalem, but at the same time he is also ready to double down and send a message of surrender. In one of Isaiah's prophecies written in chapter 36, it is said that Sennacherib went to war to restore his rule and kill those who rebelled against him. As a result, King Hezekiah went to the house of God and prayed there. From there he even sent a message to Isaiah the prophet to pray as well. Isaiah stepped in to help Hezekiah and prophesied that King Sennacherib would eventually leave the war and be killed in Syria. And as it happened in the end, the sons of Sennacherib, king of Assyria, killed him. After the death of Hezekiah, His son Manasseh received the throne at age 12 and became king of Israel. Manasseh did evil in the eyes of God and was the most wicked king and was attracted to idolatry. He built altars to Baal and Asherah. Using his prophets, God revealed a judgment against Manasseh. God said he would deliver the remnant into the hands of the enemies. The reign of Manasseh is described in the book of Kings 21 and the book of Chronicles 33. Israel and its king worshiping idols and believing in sorcerers, committing violence and persecuting prophets during this time. The books describe Israel and its king worshiping idols and believing in sorcerers, committing violence and persecuting prophets during this time. Manasseh, the king of Judah, is a very important part of the chain of kings responsible for the destruction of the temple and the exile of Judah. He was king for 55 years, longer than any other king in Judah and Israel. He was even defined as the king evilist who harmed his people and faith in God. His sins left a bad impression on the same nation. After his death and in his time, a decree of exile was decreed over the kingdom of Judah. Perhaps that's why the Bible dedicates only a few verses to him. In the book of Kings, only 18 verses are dedicated to him, and in the book of the Chronicles, only 20 verses are dedicated to him. According to tradition, King Hezekiah, father of Manasseh, with the daughter of the prophet Isaiah, meaning that he is the grandson of the prophet Isaiah, whom he also killed in the end. The story of his last moments of Isaiah's life became bitter and tragic due to the persecution of King Manasseh, who feared for his throne and murdered him. Manasseh challenges the prophet Isaiah to provide evidence to support Moses' prophecies. The prophecy in which he sees God contrary to Moses' words that man will not see me and live. Although Moses himself saw God on Mount Sinai, as written in Exodus 20:4-10, Isaiah, instead of responding to him, whose response would lead to his immediate death, decided to flee. According to this legend, during his escape, the prophet saw a cedar and called out the name of God and was immediately swallowed by it. King Manasseh ordered the tree to be closed and thus killed the prophet, but miraculously the tree was not closed until they reached the place where the prophet's lips were. At the moment the miracle ended, the tree was closed and the prophet was killed. Some other stories tell that Isaiah was trapped inside a hollow tree trunk and closed in half. Closing in half is a known painful method of execution. Since ancient times they are expressed in different ways, vertically or horizontally from head to toe. Isaiah defied challenges and particularly opposition from those not in power, criticized the decisions of kings, predicted tragedies, and asked the people of Israel to seek God first. He truly desired a world in which goodness and justice prevail, a world in which people defend the oppressed, protect the injured, and give shelter to widows and orphans. Isaiah's legacy therefore lives not only in words, but through the deeds of those he warned to his desire for a world governed by goodness and justice, and finds resonance in the everyday actions of ordinary people who choose to stand up, protect, and shelter